Welcome to Marsh Stream. I'm Stephanie Wiseman, founder and artistic director of the Marsh and Marsh Stream, and so thrilled to be here tonight for Solo Arts Heal. Let's give a great big hand for Gail Schickele. Hello, Gail. How are you tonight?
I'm great, Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie. I'll say thank you that we learned from Gloria Rosen. Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Solo Arts Heal, the Marshstream platform where our artist storytellers share inspiring real-life scenarios as survivors, caregivers, and advocates in stories of overcoming adversity and surviving mental and physical challenges, becoming health and life advocates, and more. These shows are informances as much as performances, when artists not only perform but engage with us after in talkbacks and with guest experts and you, our audience. It's good to have all of you here, and it's enriching to have the feeling of being a true global society where we recognize that we may all be inspired by these stories because we all have health issues in our lives. We're all more alike than different, are we not? I was thinking today, years ago at an all-girls school, I had the good fortune of playing one of my favorite speeches as Shakespeare's Shylock, who reminds us we all have the same organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winters and summers. Well, you get my point. At this time in history, as much as ever, we need remember that we're together in this pandemic. We wear our masks not just for ourselves, but for our fellow traveler. And we're learning the importance of smiling with our eyes. For me, really, part of this joy has been working with these creative artists who remind us that art heals. And tonight we present another shining star, this week an historical guest, a person I've long admired, the woman responsible for creating the very concept of nursing. Florence Nightingale is channeled to us via Dr. Candace Campbell. Both will be joining us for a talkback after. Tonight, as each week, Solar Arts Heal is our gift to our communities. And added to this now, once a month, we'll be addressing the health crisis of climate change, shedding light on the many problems caused by the climate crisis and how we can work together to solve them and be good caretakers of our Mother Earth. We've got a great show lined up for you next week, and I'll tell you more about that later. All of these shows are designed to offer community empowerment to you as we highlight and embrace the healing power of the arts with humor, with drama, with grace. So now, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to the wonders of the 21st century science and technology, we have finally tapped time travel. Yes, I believe we made contact with the other side. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce to you none other than that icon of the nursing profession, Miss Florence Nightingale. Miss Nightingale, are you there?
Hello? Oh, hello! Oh, you look as surprised to see me as I am to see you. Oh, bless you for being here. I asked that kind Miss Schickele who introduced me. I said, however, did you arrange for me to arrive in a cloud? And she said something very peculiar. She said, simple, there's an app for that. I have no idea what she's talking about, but I am pleased to be here. You see, the last thing I recall, I was rolling around heaven having a cracking good time as per the usual, when Michael the Archangel presented himself to me with an invitation. He said, you have an invitation for a visitation, a short visitation to Earth. And I have to admit, I was less than pleased. I was not eager. No offense to present company, of course. I was not eager to give up my heavenly body. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, my heavenly body is young and strong. It is pain-free. It is also a size 2. This one, I'm not clear where they found this one. It looks to be, I suppose approximately a size 16 on a good day. Well, nevertheless, I then had to think of the space-time continuum and the effects of gravity. Oh my, having to deal with varicosities again and back pain and these. Oh, you do understand. But then Michael said to me, but these are people who are interested in learning from history, and they would like to hear your story. Oh, and perhaps even some of them might be nurses. Well, of course, how could I say no? So I am very pleased to be among you. And, well, he tells me the time is very short, so let me get down to business. Word on the streets of gold has it, your healthcare system has problems. Is this true? Yes, so I heard. Well, I hope that some of my recollections might do you good, so that you might not make the same mistakes in the future. All right. The first of my stories begins in a country far, far away with the unusual name of the Ukraine. I suppose it still exists? Yes, all right. Now, there is a Crimean Peninsula to the south of that land. I hope it's not still a hotbed of military activity. In my time, this story takes place a little bit south in what was known as the Ottoman Empire, Turkey. And I take you now to a small village on the Asian peninsula of Constantinople. It was called Scutari. And there we begin. When we arrived in Scutari, we saw a dilapidated 100-year-old building. It had been thrown up in a hurry by the Sultan. He used it as stables and later converted to barracks and now a hospital. So, the date, November 4th, 1854. I wish you could have been there. 3,000 injured. And that hospital used as barracks then. Miles and miles of fallen men. Oh, friends, they were boys, actually. 16 to 22-year-olds. Oh, heroes. 'Twas clear. Oh, the faces. I'm a switchgear. Switchgear. Oh, it was built on a cesspool, that hellhole in Scutari. It contaminated the water and the ground all around, and of course, unsurprisingly, enter cholera, our uninvited guest, whom, by the time we arrived, had captured nearly 60% of the lives. Oh, and the wounded, when they arrived on shore, caked with mud and gore. They had been traveling for 8 or 9 days on rickety ships, tossed by wind and waves, sans shoes or boots, all left behind, many of them missing an appendage, on the battlefield upended, with their minds. Oh, friends, we had so little to give them. There was no furniture, no beds. Oh, and the floor. How shall I describe it all? What your step. To fall would be excremental. We dubbed it BMS, for blood, mud, and stool. Ugh, horrible. Now, I must ask, I wonder if in your modern times you still have a problem staffing hospitals. Well, before we arrived, for every 95 patients, there was but one surgeon who sawed and sawed from son to son, on one mother's son to another, without a nurse. There were orderlies. They kept no order. They introduced thievery to the quarter. And there was no operating theatre. No operating tables. No amputations carried out on the ward in front of the men. There were no blankets or labels or morphine or, well, there was some chloroform, but on the norm 'twas rarely used. The doctor said, "In your haste it might be wasted." And I replied, "Only if you hypothesize that none shall survive." And unfortunately, that assumption was generally correct. Oh, my friends, as I stood there and surveyed the death and destruction more than I could ever imagine, I thought two things. One, war is hell. And the other was a little tune and the words of a once popular song. Mother told me not to come. Ah, yes. It seemed like years had passed since I made my grand announcement to my family at our home in Embley, when actually it had been only a few months. So come with me now as I make the grand announcement in the parlor where Mother and Father were sitting. It was tea time, as I recall, as I brought in the London Times. "Oh, Mother, Father, did you see the Times this morning? It says right here, more soldiers are dying from disease than wounds they've received in battle." "Oh, yes, dear." I saw. Dreadful. "Oh, don't look so forlorn, my dear. It is war, after all." "Biscuit?" "Mother, no, please. Listen. My friend, Lord, the Minister of War. Yes, he has asked me to supervise the very first British Army Nurse Corps in a military hospital in Turkey." "What? Oh, the Minister of War expects our daughter to go where? To some godforsaken country and do what?" Why, I'll minister to our injured soldiers, Mamma." "You'll do no such thing, William. Wake up." "Oh, what? Have you heard what her friend, our Minister of War, has proposed?" "Proposed? Well, he's already married." "Oh, no, Papa. No, I'm to travel to the Ottoman Empire as a nurse." "Oh, preposterous. You do no such thing." "Precisely what I have told her." "Oh, Mother, Father, I am not a child. I'm 34 years old, and I did not intend to ask your permission, but your blessing." "Oh, Papa." "No, you listen to me, my pet. You're still my responsibility. You hear? And get my hands on it. He should have asked me first. First me. Humbug. You not go, and that is final." But I would go, despite my family's resistance. I would go, or my name's not Flo. Yes, I relied for encouragement on the promises woven like threads throughout the scriptures. One of those promises, one of my favorites, was the one the Lord gave to Captain Joshua. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Fear not the wind, fear not the rain, for I am with you. Not. Oh, my friends, when I think of those faces, those words were said and sung to many a sick and dying soldier. It gave them hope, and it gave us hope too. I cannot apologize for the emotions that rise so quickly to the fore after so long a time. Oh, is it not meet, right, and salutary that we should at all times thank those who have donned a uniform in defense of their country, those who have given everything? Oh, my friends, I have it on good authority that some are listening even now. So perhaps there are some veterans who have donned the military outfit in this audience. First responders, oh yes, you are heroes. You dash to the fore, not thinking of yourself, risking life and limb to defend us. Well, shall we not give them a thank you now? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Oh, friend. I just had an ironic thought. When I was young, I thought if my intentions were good and I put my feet on the path, that the Lord would make it straight. It would be smooth sailing after that. Nothing could be further from the truth. One of my good friends said that there are many tests in the testimony. Ah, yes. And for we nurses, well, obviously, the first of our tests was the journey. We set sail in October. Primarily calm seas on the Adriatic. But not that year. Oh, no. We withstood weeks of winter. Ooh, weather on a rickety ship ourselves. And when finally we arrived on shore, we were we were drenched from the transfer ship to shore, but eager to begin. And oh, my friends, our most unwelcome surprise is that we were reviled by the physician's staff and challenged to turn round and retreat. Oh, we had no such intention, not to mention that journey. Oh, well, it was up to me to speak up. Sir, we have no intention. It is clear. One glance around. We are needed here. Our mission, sir, will be heeded. We are professional nurses. Reinforcements are we. Blimey. Ladies have no busyness in the army. Oh, his patronistic views did gall me. You, kind sir, you have an obstructionist view of women at war, to be sure. To be sure. That was not unwarranted in time past, true. Oh, but those were women of ill repute, not me nor you. Given to too much strong drink, were they? Ugh. Oh, how could he think that... Sir, how could you think that our nurses' cadre of 18 Sisters of Mercy and we 20 others, handpicked, trained by me, professional nurses, many of us old enough to be their mothers, are the same sort? Sir, you sell us short. Forgive me, sport, but what I say goes, for I'm the chief physician. Oh! Well, I say. I decided not to argue with this disingenuous supposition. Father were here to give him a good set down. Such imperious impertinence, I never. So I ask you, you nurses tuning in, did we shirk? No, of course not. We set right about to prove our mettle, beginning with a kettle, which I provided, along with many other supplies, in which to wash men's clothes. Ha! Oh, yes. Suddenly we were useful. And so we continued. We cast the shutters aside. We opened the windows wide, cleansing the putrefaction inside of bodies, minds, and hearts. Yes, and with a little help from the least infirm. Oh, we watched cockroaches squirm. Oh, well, we cleaned that place with fastidious grace from ceiling to floor mats. With a brush in one hand and a broom in the other, we scrubbed the floors and whacked the rats. Yeah, Bob's your uncle. So we did. And we sewed. We sewed bandages and sheets. I fashioned the first ICU bedshirt with the back revealed. And we knit, oh yes, we knit stockings and scarves and stump covers for a different sort of living fast and dying young. Oh, no fun, no fun. And we started a library with paper, ink, and quills to write home. And though vitamin D was unknown to me, we started a program of physical therapy. It seemed so natural, yes, intuitively, to walk about, sit in the sun, deeply respirate. Yes, your modern research supports our patient care, and we were making progress there. Well, 4 months passed until we heard through Little Bird they had lifted the curses. We were now allowed to serve as nurses. Aha. And so I must ask you another question, nurses. Do you think in those interim 4 months my quill was still? Of course not. Of course not. I wrote letters to that Minister of War, Sidney Herbert, on a daily basis, sometimes twice a day, telling him of the cesspool nonsense and the horse we found underneath it. Oh, and all the plumbing and all these other problems and problems with the physicians who did not want to accept us. I wrote volumes, actually. a lot of volumes. And the news? He dispatched 2 structural engineers and a hydro expert. Oh, men with purpose, men with views who at first had a good laugh about my splendid expectations for a 100-year-old, dilapidated 100-year-old building. Oh, but friends, we were rationed to 8 ounces of water a day, okay? Oh, well, in no time, it seemed, they fitted us out with running water. Oh, luxury, not fantasy any longer. Hooray! But the best part was that soon after, the death rate from disease plummeted to 2%. Ah, heaven sent. Oh, my friends, I find it odd that the newspapers heralded me, the instigator who resolved it. But I tell you, those engineers, they were the heroes who solved it. You see, all of us finally came together as a team with a dream of change. And we dared to care. And so that is how we were able to make a difference there. And that, my friends, is the first lesson I learned in Scutari. Thank you. Oh, I am feeling a gravitational pull. Let me see. Oh! Why, thank you very much. It's so kind of you to make me feel at home. And a glass of water.
Miss Nightingale, thank you for your outstanding good work and great insights. It's such an honor to have you with us tonight.
It is mutual. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
Now, I understand you might have some questions.
I do indeed, and we'll also invite questions from our audience. But I want to ask you, what is your insight? Here you are now in the 21st century. Do you have an insight about nursing in the 21st century? Is there a way to bring more heart, soul, and healing into nursing into our 21st century?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, indeed. The art of nursing is the heart of nursing. And although we have, I am sure, well, I have heard, you have many technological advances, and it makes me wonder why the disease rate is still high, but that's another subject. But you have all these advances, and yet without the heart, the kindness, the soul of nursing. Ask anyone who has been a patient or had a family member in the hospital. You have nothing. The nurse is the glue that keeps it all together.
Indeed, this is a very special time that we're all going through. Tell us, what is your opinion of the coronavirus?
Well, you see, I have no experience, of course, with the coronavirus, but unfortunately, I dealt with the pandemic twice. Yes, the first was in 1852 and then 53, prior my tenure in Scutari, in London. Yes, the great cholera pandemic. You see, at the time, some thought it was an epidemic, but in hindsight, we see that because travel was limited in those days, that particular cholera strain, a pandemic, wound its way beginning in India in approximately 1847. It took a few years to get to London, but then it came, and then we faced the surge and the scourge, we used to call it, of patients. We were in continual flux, not running out of supplies, not having enough beds, watching death and disease every day. And when I left for Scutari, there was a part of me who thought, oh, at least I'm not having a cholera epidemic. And what do you know? Plop right into the next one.
Oh goodness. What advice would you give to nurses today in leadership positions?
Well, overall, I think we need to praise more and discipline less. Yes, we must remember that if you are in the business of healthcare, the chances are very good that you only want to serve humankind. And therefore, sometimes any discipline that leaders might mete out is secondary to the eternal discipline. The person who has caused an accident, failed in some way in his or her own mind, even if it is just a conversation with a family member, something left unsaid, or perhaps they were tired, hypoglycemic, and they they had a rude or surly remark to some other teammate. I know they feel badly about that. So use praise more and criticism less is my advice.
Very good advice. Thank you. What is your definition of a good nurse?
Well, I've had it said that a good nurse is like a horse, a policeman, perhaps. And we should be more like the detective. We seek out the problems. And a porter or a horse, these are people and beasts of burden. That is a diminutive consideration, I would say. We are not servants. We have a servant heart, but the nurse is a person who must have a love for humankind and a desire, an ability to put oneself second and run into the fray like those first responders and serve first, because there is no small service. The kindness that undergirds our service is something that permeates everything we do. Without it, we only make the patients sicker.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Should nurses ever go solo?
Oh, well, I would be a fan of proper licensure and advanced education, of course. We nurses have a very broad education. And if a particular nurse would like to perhaps put out her shingle, I see no reason why not. In my day, it was not uncommon. We had midwives who functioned independently, mostly through a religious order, but some were secular and quite successful on the whole.
Very good. I'd heard that you were a Christian mystic. Were you a Christian mystic? Are you a Christian mystic?
I say, I never thought of myself as such. I think of myself as a nurse, a statistician, a Christian for sure, in no particular order. But one must define mysticism. Is that not a general term for wanting to become closer to God on a personal level without the rites and ceremonies, etc.? The rote spiel. I think if that is the case, then yes, I'll admit, then perhaps I am a mystic, because God is a mystical sort of entity, And well, I will tell you one other thing. If your question means that did I have a crystal ball or a Ouija board of anything of the sort, no. I never did. I could have used a magic carpet, but I never found one.
Very good. I think we could all use a magic carpet, definitely. Let me ask you, what do you have to say about the problem of bullying?
If you mean, well, I would say this is a spiritual immaturity, in my opinion. You see, when we are selfish, we are putting ourselves first. And in healthcare, it has no business at all. And when, like I said before, if we are curt with one another, perhaps that's a momentary thing. But a bully, as I understand it, has a target and is throwing darts, as it were, at a particular person. It's the essence of unkindness. We have no use for that in nursing, and yet, yes, I saw it. I had to step in from time to time and put their halos on straight, if you will, because, again, in my mind, bullying is nothing more than immaturity and selfishness.
And you endured some bullying yourself, I think. Especially as you started out so bravely and amazingly with all the women that joined with you. Did you experience burnout?
Oh, yes. Oh, heavens. Oh, especially those first 4 months. Oh, my heavens. It was dreadfully cold. The barracks were water was coming in. As I said, we had not enough water. Rations. Oh my heavens! It was the worst sort of conditions. We were working 7 days a week. I did my best to give each nurse some time out, some time alone to rest and recharge. And there are times, I tell you, I took my white apron and sat in the corner with it over my head like Abigail Andrews and Adams, and just had to take a few minutes to myself. It was difficult, yes. And yet, there was a turning of the corner. Before the 4 months' time were out, I will tell you an interesting story. There was a reporter from the London Times who came to visit. Now, my father and my family, being some of them statesmen, my grandpapa had worked with William Wilberforce to stop that onus of slavery in Britain, the 1830s, but my father warned me. He said, to both my sister and I, he said, never trust a newspaper person. They will take your words and twist them around and make an entirely different meaning out of them, all to sell the papers. So you see, when I was told that William Randolph Hearst, the renowned writer from the London Times, was here to see me, I said, I'm busy. Tell him to go away. Oh, but you know, he turned my heart. He sent me a note. He said, Miss Nightingale, I understand. However, if you will speak to me, it would be beneficial for the men. Well, so I said yes. And you know the result. He wrote an article. He praised our nurses' corps. He had seen the barracks prior. He had seen the filth and the horrors. And he said that now, although conditions were still dire, it was clean. The men were smiling. And the result of this article, two wonderful things happened. The first was that people wrote in and gave out of their own pockets, with their hearts, and they created a fund. I did not want them to name it after me. They did. It was the Nightingale Fund. I believe it still exists, but of course I took nothing from it, but I was the administrator. And you see, whenever then we needed supplies or what have you, I just let it be known and took the funds out of there, and then we had what we needed. But that's not all. Oh, that's not all. Oh, the other wonderful thing that happened was that a gentleman by the name of Alex Soyer, a French chef living in London, saw that article and he wrote me. He volunteered to come and help us. And I hired him. Oh, I tell you, what a change. We went from oatmeal like thin gruel for all of us to eat to croutons and sauces and bits of lamb and beef. Oh, I tell you. And that man, what a smile. He was sunshine in his face every time he would walk the wards, giving them little bits of delicacies, desserts that he had created. He was marvelous. And I tell you, he had a sense of humor. Sometimes it would be days before you could see a smile across my face, and he would say with a twinkle in his eyes, "Est-ce que vous voulez boire avec moi? What would you like to drink with me?" Oh, he was always joking.
Lovely.
Tell you. Yes.
I have a couple other questions, but briefly, an audience member asked that she read you enjoyed the art of reflection. Could you just address the importance of reflection in our nursing practice? This is from Marlene Steinhauser.
Thank you very much. Yes, yes, yes. For those who do not know, my sister Parthy said I had diarrhea of the pen. I nearly fell off a stool. Oh, yes, I could not help myself. This was therapy to me. Now, it began as a youngster, you see, because my family thought I was a bit touched in the head, if you will. I said I had a calling from no one else but God himself. When I was nearly 17, I was still 16. Well, not everyone goes around speaking in such ways. And so my diary, my reflections helped me concentrate on what I believed were the promises that I had. I had no idea what would become of me or what I should do exactly, but I knew that I wanted to help other people.
Wonderful. And your schooling was at Cambridge, was it?
Oh no, they've claimed me. The Queen's College, they've claimed me posthumously, but no, I was homeschooled. Yes, you see, in my day, women were not allowed in university. No, no, no. In the Victorian age, it was common for us to learn to read and write and sketch and play the pianoforte, things like that. But my father saw that I loved mathematics. I thrilled to mathematics, and I wanted to learn Latin and Greek so that I might thrill at Plato and learn Euclid in his own language. And so he allowed me to study. Yes, in the end, I learned 6 languages and traveled widely before Scutari. And then, the end is approximately 200 articles and books, and I hear you have over 15,000 of my letters still around.
Indeed, we do. We're so lucky to have them. Tell me, if you were an American citizen, whom would you have voted for in the last election?
Well, if I was an American citizen, if you are reflecting upon this lame duck Congress, 'tis understood, but I, being a British citizen, I could not say, nor would I like to say, but here is a thought. I do think I have the solution. Yes, I abjure you. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, if you would just put down this notion of rebellion and rejoin the motherland, it would solve all the problems.
Very good. Do you, Miss Nightingale, do you have any concluding remarks?
Well, first let me say that perhaps you have intuited that the problems you may have in your healthcare system today are similar to the problems that we had in my day. We have too much work, not enough people to do the work, and not enough funding to carry it out. Well, you see, systems being made by human hands are fallible. And of course, the world is always in a state of flux, no matter if we have a pandemic or not. We must learn to innovate, to ride the waves of change, as it were. And I would add, for those of you who are in positions of leadership, oh, please use your eyes and your ears, open yourself up so that you can help craft change. Yes, that is the message I would like to say. And do it all. I would say this: seize the day with kindness.
Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful closing thought. Thank you so much. And Miss Nightingale, the audience also has questions for your avatar, Dr. Campbell. Would we be able to meet her tonight?
Oh, indeed, indeed. Yes. One moment, if you please.
Thank you. Ah, Dr. Candace Campbell. It's so lovely to have you with us. Welcome.
I don't know if I can, this is too funny. Okay, yeah, here I am.
Oh, fantastic. You have an amazing career as an award-winning actress and as a nurse. How have you been able to juggle this and go from one to the other in all these years you've been doing this?
Well, I have to tell you, one of my signature stories is people do ask me how in the world did this all happen, and when I was young, I was on my way to New York or LA. I had a degree in theater and acting, and something happened. And it's interesting today because for many, many years, I never said anything about it. But I had what they used to call the casting couch experience. And a person who was a director that I thought I knew, uh, I had babysat his kids. I had the lead in a show, and he happened one night we were there alone, and he put the moves on me. And I basically threw him across the room and said, "What in the world are you doing?" And he said to me, "Well, you're going to be an actor. You're going to LA and then New York. Come on, this is the way it goes." And I said, "Not for me, not that kind of gal." So I walked off the show, and it was just like a Hollywood moment. He said, "You'll never work in this town again." And
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. So, providentially, I guess, Pan Am was coming to town. I interviewed. I got a job as a flight attendant. And I often say that the next 5 years was my longest running acting gig, makeup and everything. And then the funny thing was that after I'd been flying about 4.5 or so years, we were flying from New Delhi to Karachi, Pakistan. And for anybody who knows that flight, it's a pretty local flight. A lot of Indian natives also have family in Pakistan and vice versa. And so we were on a 747 in the day when they used to serve a 3-course meal, even in economy. You remember that, Gail?
I do.
Chicken, fish, or steak. Yes. And so that day, my colleague and I were serving the tail end of the plane, and we had 124 passengers. It was packed. Grannies and grandpas and ducks underneath the seat. You know, international laws are different. And after the swarm meal, we took a whatever you call it, we had turbulence. And so, of course, the seatbelt sign went on, and we were talking with one another. And suddenly we dropped, I don't know, it seemed like about 3 stories, suddenly, just a boom like this. And we watched as 124 people vomited in And that day, I learned there's two kind of people. There's a kind that runs to hide, and there's the kind that runs to help. And I was the latter. And when it was all over, my colleague came back and said to me, "How in the world did you pull that off? You ought to be a nurse." And I thought, I thought about that a lot when I was a kid. And my high school teacher said, "Well, with B's and C's and math and science, I don't think you'd ever pass chemistry." So, I became an actor. So that's how they kind of merged.
Wow, that's incredible. And now, I mean, as a nurse, you do keynotes and workshops and retreats and all kinds of things. And as an actor, you were here for years as a professor at the University of San Francisco, a medical center, and also you were a co-founder of an improv and stand-up comedy group here in the Bay Area, were you not?
I know, but first of all, my friends at University of San Francisco will have a conniption fit if I don't correct you. It was not UCSF, although that was a wonderful place.
Oh, pardon me.
There. But no, yes, I was at USF. And you see, when I came to San Francisco area in 1992 after a divorce, it was a difficult time. I was a single mom with kids 8, 11, and 13, and I just needed to laugh again. And I saw a little thing in the newspaper about stand-up comedy classes, and so I decided to attend. And so I did stand up for about 9 years in the Bay Area, part time. And but right away, all the other people that I was in class with were talking about improv. So you may know, I mean, I'm sure you probably know some of the same people that I studied with, starting with Sue Walden and then at Bats, and yes, for many, many years. And then 4 of us broke off. We made the Barely Insane Theater Company, and we were doing stand-up and improv. And in 1995, I started teaching improv. That was that.
Wow, that's terrific. And you've had several solo shows.
Hmm? Yeah, this is the third. They've all been about healthcare. The first one was a trunk show where I did, I think, 12 characters, and I just, turn around and put on a cap or something like that. It was for one of my professional organizations. It was only a one-night stand. And then the second one was at the Fringe Festival there in San Francisco. Was one of the 10 best to watch that year, which was, I want to say 97 or something, I think, and had a run there at, do you remember Venue 9 years ago? Okay, it's closed. But anyway, we had a run for about another month outside of the Fringe. And that's how I got into ASCAP, writing a song and lyrics and that kind of thing for the show. Anyway, this is a third.
Fantastic. And you also have an award-winning documentary film on micro premature babies. How
Micro premature babies, how low can you go? Right. All of the books that I've written and the shows, I've always had kind of a, something that keeps you awake at night, and you think, oh, somebody ought to do that. Somebody ought to do that. And then pretty soon it's like, oh no, am I supposed to do this? Oh, I really, as an actor, I had an agent. I have a new agent now on the East Coast, but I had a commercial agent in San Francisco for many, many years. And while I was working full time as a nurse on my days off or whenever I could, sometimes after work, I'd run over maybe and do a voiceover, a commercial or something like that. And so I knew a lot of producers in the San Francisco area. And speaking of this film, I was a neonatal nurse for many years, and I saw what happened in 1995, beginning then, when we were saving these infinitesimal little kids. They were only as big as my hand. I don't have a very big hand. And there was a study that came out right about that time of babies that were in the 80s, born in the 80s, and it wasn't a happy study. And the study reflected on IQs and quality of life. And basically, it was something that the AP and Reuters picked up. And one day, we went into the nursery, and all the parents were passing around this paper. You remember paper? And they were passing it around the paper and crying, because here we were saving the teeny babies. And I kept saying to these other producers, somebody's got to tell the story of what's different now. What's different now than then? And they all said the same thing. If you really have a passion to tell that story, you really need to go to film school. And so I did. And that was that.
Well, you are an inspiration. I thank you so much, Dr. Campbell, for being with us tonight, and Miss Nightingale. It was just absolutely fabulous. Do you have any other closing remark that you would care to make?
Well, I would like to say if anyone would like to get a hold of me, my agent is, you can go to my website or pmiarts.com. My agent, Dr. Manuel Prestamo in Miami, will connect you to me, or you can go to my website, florencenightingalelive.com. I have a book that was written because people who were in the audience asked me if I had a book. And so I wrote the book. And this book is not just the script of the show, a longer version, of course. It's just an excerpt, but it's also a parallel of my life and how Miss Nightingale inspired me, because I read most all of her 200 books and 15,000 letters in order to really get into her persona.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm so glad she did inspire you and that you have inspired all of us. And in the chat, the audience can find all the information about Dr. Campbell. And you can look in the chat room for all these links. And I'd like to offer a very special thank you to Miss Florence Nightingale and you, Dr. Campbell, and to Dr. Manuel Prestamo at Performance Management International. And our audience, you can look for upcoming Solo Arts Heal shows on the Marsh stream and much more at themarsh.org. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We'll see you next week. And August 12th, I do want to announce that we have Solo Arts Heal Climate next week with the wonderful Blake Sugarman, a multidisciplinary Brooklyn-based artist. Blake will be sharing excerpts from Prelude to the Apocalypse, for what it's worth, his outstanding show that engages with the climate crisis through the lens of evolutionary time, the biblical apocalypse, and the process of growing up as a person in a society. It all takes place in the shadow of a giant hourglass. Nevertheless, the universe breathes on through a bend of personal narrative, social commentary, and pop science performance art. Blake brings a fresh take to the climate crisis. So join us next week for that. And thank you to our Zoom and YouTube audiences, our producers, Brian and Brianna, and always to the Marsh Executive and Artistic Director, Stephanie Weisman. Stay healthy and safe, everyone.
Thank you.
I want to remind you all to consider giving a tip in our tip jar to keep the Marsh stream strong, our public broadcast platform, as well as I hope you'll come and see my show tomorrow night with the brilliant, dynamic, and incredible Ron Jones, and then look forward to the Invisible Line American premiere of a new documentary. Thank you so much. Like Gail says, stay healthy and in good spirits, and see you soon. Bye-bye now.